Okay, so this is the last part of this book. It's called Part 5, Engaging Art and Design for and with Nature-Based Solutions. I love artists, I love art. I've lived in cities where there have been massive exhibits of art, not necessarily always focused on oops, I need to get this into display mode first. Not necessarily with the intent of NBS and so on. Nonetheless, the awareness of art as a part of the environmental solution, at least in depicting the impacts of climate change and so on, has grown more and more. The chapter here is called Making Art and the same thing here, engaging art and design for and with nature-based solutions. There are a few chapters, starting with another beautiful article here, another beautiful art. Here it's showing here now not so much the cities, but you can see a mix of urban lives and culture and art and farming and everything together. It's about being aware of the larger context in which cities exist. Everything we do affects the interface to the rural areas. We share the airshed, the watershed, and water often with them, and many times cities get priority in terms of water supplies and power supply and so on, because they tend to be financial centers and innovation centers and so on and so forth. And generally it is felt that rural areas have better air quality, better social cohesion and so on, but now things are complicated, and the most enduring statistic is that more and more people want to live in cities and urban areas. There is more and more urbanization going on, and the biggest growth in energy demand will come from buildings in cities by, let's say, 2050. Okay, we have to keep those things in mind as we are thinking about combining art. Now we see here a city in the background. So left, Yves Moshe performing High Water Line in New York City 2014. There is Yves Mosher. I don't know if it's Moshe or Mosher. In New York in 2014, so that's the New York City backdrop there. Maybe that's the one of the bridges. I don't know if it's Brooklyn Bridge. I'm not so good at quickly recognize it. Moshe performing High Water Line in Miami. So that's her kind of signature art. Many of these artists have their signature lines, and the next chapter is about something called 1+1. So imagination, 1+1 equal to 3. So how to bring about the imagination the artists have to cities to give a sense of how the future of cities will look like. So you can imagine now again art and architecture mixed with all kinds of nice images of what imagination looks like. So this art we will look at in a minute. This implementation we will look at in a minute. Again, there is a nice mix of colors and age groups in people, families, and biodiversity, and farming activities and so on. This is along the similar lines, but now it is about governance and it's about bringing art as an additional way of planning things to give, art is part of the well-being and mental health as well, right? So people throng to places which have murals all over the place. There are villages in North India, in Uttarakhand, where there are artistic villages where every little house has got some very nice mural on it. You find this in Valparaiso in Chile, if I remember correctly. There are places like that all over the place. So they have a unique character to them, but now we are talking about doing that more in the sense of nature-based solutions, remembering that nature-based solutions for cities are not just about resilience to extreme events and water and airshed and watershed and so on, but also about health outcomes, mental health and well-being and so on. So art also has to fit in into that overall bigger agenda. So here is an example of Lucia Mong's Planton Mobile. So this may be a French word here, French artist here, Lucia Monge. I have no idea. I should have done some homework. But anyway, you can see here people pushing their carts with little plants in them, and it's a nice way of showing greenery walking into the city. Plantomobile is moving plants, I suspect. So Phytoscape map developed for slow cleanup by Francis Whitehead, showing the original 10 slow cleanup sites identified in Chicago, Illinois. So you can see here slow cleanup, civic experiments with phytoremediation. So we have phytoplankton, photosynthesis. Phyto is generally light, photo is also light. Phytoremediation is in that sense nature-based solutions again, but cleaning the water, cleaning the air with vegetation as well. Phytoremediation sites worrying about hydrology, the city boundary here, fruiting, bosque, biofuels, fragrance, birdscape, prairies, and knowledge mixed with winter color in these nice meadows as well. Okay, so obviously this is about wetlands and vegetation again, reducing runoff, nutrients loading, and cleaning the water that gets into the groundwater as well, and slowing down the running water from extreme events, and reduce runoff, erosion, and so on and so forth. So the conclusion of these couple of chapters, the one chapter that we just looked at in 14, the examples described here provide a glimpse of the immense scope of work by artists engaging with the issues of ecology and the environment around the globe. Artists are increasingly involved in co-visioning urban greening plans, so it's not just about beauty and art and visualization and imagination, but actually being involved in urban greening plans, working closely with scientists and other stakeholders, co-creating participatory works that foreground the importance of urban nature and helping city dwellers shape their world views, among other efforts. Yet, despite the enormous potential, artists are still rarely included in meaningfully. Let me read that again. Yet, despite the enormous potential, artists are rarely included meaningfully in the planning processes or decision making at the city or regional level. Assumptions about what artists can bring to the table and recurring resistance to realizing flexible and inclusive decision making processes are fundamental factors. As practitioners with expertise, artists should be recognized as valuable contributors and integrated into all research and planning stages. This is going one step ahead of what we had said before about incentivizing people and firms to adapt, where we talked about the importance of community-based organizations, indigenous knowledge to be integrated, all the residents of cities being stakeholders and agents in decision making around them, and so on and so forth. This is talking about artists themselves being part of the whole process of planning and green spaces and strategizing nature-based solutions and so on. So here is about visualizing more dynamically the impacts themselves. So this is Refuge in Refuse at the Albany Bulb landfill in 2014. So landfills, of course, are part of the problem of human activity in terms of dumping all the garbage and waste we create, and they are major sources of methane when they are not managed properly, and they leach a lot of nasty chemicals into the surface water and groundwater as well. So this is an art form of showing that landfill here, and now more and more awareness is also growing. So this is environmental protesters in Seoul, South Korea, singing about beauty of organic farms. So in the city they're talking about organic farms, and there is more and more information and knowledge and understanding and implementation and metrics to show that vertical farming, green roofs, and other things in cities are major contributors to mitigation as well as adaptation. They reduce energy use, they reduce emissions, they reduce nutrient runoff, and they contribute to producing food locally. One of the problems, of course, about city dwellers is they can be so disconnected from food production and other rural activities that they may forget that there is a bigger world out there. Okay, so bringing it all together, this is now looking like the more complicated version of what we have seen before, with the kids in learning things, stargazing instead of worrying about the end of the world. There is the urban landscape with its biodiversity, green space, tourism, public transportation, private cars, vegetation, rooftop gardens, and so on, and individual homes, office space, commercial buildings, maybe government buildings, and water bodies with people walking. So all these together is about how do we make nature-based solutions work for people and the planet. As we look beyond the present to the remainder of this urban century, so it's called urban century because urbanization is expected to continue and more people are going to move into cities. It is abundantly clear that our cities need to become the places where we actively build a society that is inclusive, equitable, and resilient, and that harnesses the collective political, economic, social, technological, and nature-based tools to solve our twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. So urbanization is inevitable, urban population growth is inevitable, contribution of urban areas to climate change and impact of climate change on cities is inevitable, but biodiversity and resilience need not be sacrificed to accomplish these things. Investing in urban development, design, and governance that brings nature into the center can be the source for reconnecting humanity to the biosphere and be part of delivering the cities we want. So it is to make sure that urban centers do not become completely disconnected from the environment as a whole. So under that, the last chapter, towards mainstreaming nature-based solutions for achieving biodiverse, resilient, and inclusive cities. So overall adaptation, we have said, is only possible in terms of sustaining adaptation, worrying about future risks with their uncertainties, and not delaying action. Adapt now approach can work only when adaptation as a whole is mainstreamed into fiscal policies, budget processes, and funding is maintained so that countries don't spend all the resources in battling crisis after crisis, but actually have sustained efforts to build resilience into the future in the coming years and decades. The same thing works for nature-based solutions for cities. We must mainstream nature-based solutions for achieving biodiverse, resilient, and inclusive cities. So some insights to summarize: put nature-based solutions first in adaptation to climate change in cities. Insight 2, make equity and justice central to in the design, planning, and management and governance of nature-based solutions in cities. Insight 3, ensure biodiversity is a priority in urban planning for nature-based solutions. So cities have grown haphazardly. There are many retrofitting solutions possible, and in that we need to ensure also that biodiversity is a priority in planning for nature-based solutions. Insight 4, employ and design nature-based solutions to improve human health in cities. This is very critical because the vulnerabilities to extreme events and health with the air pollution issues and so on tend to be high in cities and very disparate in terms of socioeconomic classes across neighborhoods, and the gradients in wealth can be very strong as well, right? Very rich neighborhoods next to slums and poor neighborhoods and so on. Insight 5, realize nature-based solutions in cities with inclusive urban planning and innovative governance approaches that respond to local context dynamics. That's what I meant by neighborhood scale issues and neighborhood scale gradients in socioeconomics. We already looked at how social science research for adaptation shows that social inclusiveness and segregation in cities in terms of exposure to different social classes can be reduced by making sure that the planning includes shared spaces between different socioeconomic classes. Otherwise, segregation grows very rapidly unintentionally as well. Okay, insight 6, finally, assess the holistic value of urban nature to make a case for nature-based solutions solutions in cities. Insight 7, bringing art into nature-based solutions and position art as a nature-based solution in cities. So art itself is a part of the nature-based solutions, good for mental health, well-being, planning, nature-based solutions as well, and not just visual rendition of bad things or good things, imaginary things, and so on. In this book, we started with two realizations. First, that NBSs are multidisciplinary projects requiring interdisciplinary research and transdisciplinary collaborations. And second, that NBS are really a suite of solutions varying from wild landscapes to highly managed and sorry, this water I picked up from a spa yesterday. Usually I drink from my bottle, so I do avoid bottled water just to protect myself against any quick comments about me being not. Of course, I'm not perfect, and I travel, I fly around, and so on. And I've expressed my philosophy elsewhere, even on the video that introduces my channel, saying everybody needs to get some carbon footprint, like 10 tons per person per year, as suggested, let's say, in the book How Bad Are Bananas, which I have as a series of podcasts on my channel. So I live that philosophy by adjusting my portfolio. When I fly, I offset it. When I have to use plastic bottle, I try to offset it, and so on. Okay. So in this book, we started with two realizations. First, that NBS our nature-based solutions are multidisciplinary projects requiring interdisciplinary research and transdisciplinary collaborations. And second, that NBSs are really a suite of solutions varying from wild landscapes to highly managed and constructed urban green and blue infrastructures, which we have looked at least in the form of art. For NBSs to be effective, they require the weaving and coordination of expertise across ecology, urban design and architecture, urban policy and planning, environmental engineering, governance, and art at multiple scales. We have intended to accomplish this weaving through the 5 parts of this book, including Part 1, nature-based solutions for what and for whom; Part 2, the nature of nature-based solutions; Part 3, multiple benefits of nature-based solutions; and Part 4, nature-based solutions, governance, planning, and value; and finally Part 5, engaging art and design for and with nature-based solutions. Okay, so that is a very brief run through a big book with lots of good information, lots of references that you should look up. So I will leave this with this podcast as the last one. I'm at number 8, so I've condensed a nice big book into just 8 podcasts. So you need to go fill the gaps if you are interested in more details. Okay.